Excited to talk some baseball now with one of our guys, David Dellucci, 13-year big leaguer, World Series champion, baseball analyst now for the SEC Network. Of course, a local star at Catholic High and played for the Ole Miss Rebels as well. Dellucci, what's up, brother?
Oh, man, that's about all we're doing is talking baseball. We're definitely not watching it right now, which I wish we were either at the college level or the major league level, but hopefully we'll get there soon.
It does hurt a little bit, David, that we would normally be so geeked up right now about college baseball. This is the first Memorial Day I've had off on radio because we typically don't have it off because we're talking about where everybody was seated for the tournament. So this week in general hurts a little bit more that college baseball is not being played.
Well, this you're exactly right. And I mentioned to my wife the other day, I said, we should be in Hoover right now at the SEC tournament, and this is the time of year that the LSU Tigers turn it on.
Yep.
And they roll through the SEC tournament. They're almost always in the final championship game. And then the sprint ensues after the SEC tournament where we should be talking about 4 or 5 SEC teams going to Omaha. And instead, we're worried about at the college level what the roster situation is going to be like next year. Some programs are just totally doing away with baseball. It's chaos, man, and I think we've never been dependent more on football season starting than right now.
Dave, before we get to the big leagues, let's stay right there on college baseball because you mentioned the rosters. Some teams like Wisconsin says, hey, we're not bringing our seniors back. Thank you for what you did, but we are moving on. Of course, we know some teams are welcoming back every senior. We've got a situation with the Major League Baseball draft where it's only 5 rounds. You're going to have some top-tier talent actually going back and playing college baseball. Are you in the same belief that we're set up right now for maybe the most talented college baseball season we've ever had?
Will be by far, without a doubt. You're exactly right. The most talented, the most exciting from top to bottom. Everybody talks about the powerhouse programs that are consistently in the NCAA playoffs. And then next, I would say this is going to last for about 3 to 5 years. In the next 5 years, you're going to see small Division I schools that have gotten the trickle-down effect from the transfer portal beef up and become more competitive than they've ever been before, even all the way down to the JUCO level, because you also get to keep that year of eligibility at the JUCO level. The sport of baseball will be stronger than it's ever been. And unfortunately, to the seniors that have just graduated high school, they're jumping into a team like a TCU that's got 8 returning seniors. And there's not a whole lot of playing time for guys that are going to be carrying 40-man rosters this year where they normally carry 30 to 35 men. So it'll be great as the viewer, but extremely difficult as the incoming freshman.
David Dellucci joining us here on Hangin with Hester. David, I had kind of blocked it out, but now that you mention it, today would have been Regional Friday, and LSU generally plays that 1 o'clock game. We'd be right there in about the bottom of the first over at the box right now in a 1-4 game, and it makes me very, very sad. So let's change for the topic of conversation to the big leagues. A lot's been made of the Players Union, and Jacob, is very open talking about the NFL Players Union and how weak it tends to be sometimes. But the Major League Baseball Players Union is very, very strong. Why?
It's very, very strong because in the past, the Major League Baseball players have banded together and stood together to fight for the future of the game and the future ball players. I remember very vividly the 1994 strike and the 95 season because I was a player coming out of college that signed in 95, and I made it to the major leagues in 97. And so the strike was still raw in a lot of people's wounds. And I had a lot of major leaguers that were veterans tell me, we did this for you, kid, so that you can have a guaranteed contract, so you can have the best insurance program ever of terrific pension and no salary cap. And they stood together and they took the heat, man. And it lasted forever because as a player, I could hear it in the outfield where people were still bitter over the strike and what went on. It's basically goes down to from the average fan that doesn't get into the mix of the nitty-gritty words and proposals. It looks like a bunch of billionaires fighting a bunch of millionaires. And to the average citizen, they can't relate to that, especially right now with the coronavirus pandemic, where 30 to 50 million people are without a job, and 100,000 people have passed away from a terrible virus. You're looking at millionaires bickering about whether they're going to make $36 million this year or $15 million this year. It's unfathomable for the normal, hardworking person that lost his job. But you have to stick it out, and you have to do what's right for you as an individual, your family, and your business. And I think everybody in a situation at the workplace, maybe not at that price tag, would want what's best for them and what's best for the future of their company. And that's kind of where we're at. Whether you agree or disagree with both sides, they're trying to better their situation and the future Major League Baseball players to come.
David, you mentioned going through the strike in '94, which a lot of us remember, and it took baseball a little bit to get back. It took, in 1998, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, that home run chase to really, in my opinion, get some of the casual baseball fans back in the game. You were in the big leagues in '98 with the Diamondbacks. If we didn't play baseball because of this, what would that do for the future of baseball?
I don't think baseball could ever recover, to be honest with you, because I don't think we'll ever have. Thankfully, you had that home run race that rescued baseball, and I don't think you're going to have that anymore. Look, here we're in a different situation as a sport because baseball has lost its foothold as America's pastime. Football has taken that lead. Basketball has actually jumped in front of baseball. So baseball is kind of sputtering around with an awful marketing program to young kids, especially African Americans. And this right here gives them the opportunity to be one of the most watched, well, not one of, be the only sport on right now. I ended up watching a soccer game in Europe because it was a live event.
Attaboy, yeah, we got one.
And I don't even know who was playing. But, golf had the match. And that was the most watched golf event in the history of the sport. We have an opportunity. Never, ever has the world needed 9 innings of slow-paced live baseball like today. And I'm afraid we're going to miss out on that. And if both sides would just say, look, we're going to take a hit this year. Let's do what's fair for both sides, but let's keep the fan in the forefront, and let's get on TV. Let's have a baseball game on the 4th of July. You will pick up so many new fans, and then in a year or two, you'll realize you are fighting over pennies because the sport will now become popular like it once was.
So, David, it just sounds like from the outside and the reporting that's been done that they're just not all that close to an agreement. What side do you think is willing to make a concession? Which side will, quote-unquote, blink first?
I think they're closer than what they're making it out to be. I think you always have the ownership will leak to the press about how greedy baseball players are to try to use that to their advantage. But I think they're a little bit closer. I think both sides are going to have to blink. I think the Players Union has gotten soft over the last couple of years in the last couple of contracts. I think they're going to have to take a stand here. What the owners did was a very wise move on their part. Was they turned it into this is going to affect the top 1%. All these $30 million a year guys are going to get hammered. And from the media standpoint and the perception of, why is a guy making $36 million complaining, or why is a guy that's tweeting, I got to get paid this year? I understand where it's coming from, but they've taken only the 1% out and they've made them look bad. 65%, I believe, of all major leaguers make under $1 million. So the majority of those players want to get back on the field ASAP, and they're willing to risk anything they can to get that extra year under their belt, because that's a pension, that is a year closer to arbitration where they can negotiate monster contracts. It's a year closer to free agency. So a lot of these ball players want to get back on the field, and I think they're going to have a meet at a common place very, very quickly, because they're going to understand how important the sport is. The other side of it is you're dealing with billionaires that didn't make billions of dollars by accident. These guys are very, very savvy businessmen, but they don't need it as much as these younger players do. They got enough money in their bank accounts, and they got other projects where if you lose baseball for a year and you have a collective bargaining agreement coming up at the end of 2021, the bad press makes them look a whole lot better. Plus, they're going to claim that they want to employ workers at the field and concessions workers and all that kind of stuff. They've got that in their advantage right now. So I think the Players Union is going to concede a little bit, but I also think the owners are going to have to if we're going to get back on the field.
Catching up with David Dellucci, former big leaguer, of course, on the SEC network now. David, how many games, in your opinion, do you think that baseball needs? We talked about it yesterday. I felt like, the midway point, 81 games, somewhere around that. Hunt said even maybe 50 games with only division opponents. Do you have a number that says, hey, this is the minimum games that the baseball, family has to play to be able to feel like they're fulfilled in that season?
I don't think anything short of 162 is really. Look, think about it this way. Whoever wins the World Series and you don't play 162 games, if you think the Astros have an issue proving that they deserve a World Series title, wait till this team that wins it in an 82 game season. Anybody is going to say something negative about the World Series champion. Anything short of 162 games. Now, we're not going to do that. I like the 82 game proposal. I like only playing your Eastern Division opponents or Western or Central. I think that's awesome. I think that's going to definitely be interesting. 82 games is fine with me. I think to bring both sides together and to boost up the potential for revenue, it may go up to 100 games. And I'm okay with that too. Quite frankly, I think 162 games in a year is way too much, not only for the fan, but the player. So anywhere between the 82 proposed and 100, I'm totally content with. Just get the sport on TV. Yeah. Get back to playing. And they've even increased the amount of playoff teams from 10 to 14. It will make that playoff run even more exciting, but we got to get back on the field first.
David, I've got one more before we let you go, and we appreciate your time catching up with David Dellucci here. What's going on in minor league baseball? We just saw hundreds of players that are actually cut from their teams. Minor league baseball, and it seems like Rob Manfred wants minor league baseball to downsize a little bit even before this pandemic hit. What is going on right now in minor league baseball?
It's a purge for sure of dropping teams that are not making money and dropping players that, quite frankly, are not prospects and do not have major league potential. I'm afraid that that's going to be a commonplace for the future, is where they're going to get rid of a lot of money down there so that they can pay the larger salaries. And it doesn't bode well for the young man coming out of college baseball. But once again, to go back to where are we going to be in college baseball a few more years, I think you're going to see more prospects stay in college the extra year or sign out of high school to go to college. So I think it's going to make the college level turn into what equivalent of a rookie ball or minor league team would normally be. It's only those guys are still going to play baseball.
Right.
They're just going to make the collegiate level much more competitive. So I'm not as worried about that. Of course, there's some 35-year-old, 30-year-old guys that love to play baseball and want to play until you rip their jersey off. I'm sad for them, but I think baseball will still survive in the future.
All right, he is David Dellucci. Great stuff as always. Dellucci, we appreciate your time, brother.
Man, thanks for having me. Y'all keep up the great work.